And now, your go-to source for year-round fantasy hockey advice, DFS, and betting coverage. This is NHL Fantasy on Ice, presented by Skip, the official food delivery app of the NHL.
The NHL Fantasy Playoffs roll on, and we roll on the NHL Fantasy on Ice podcast. No Nick Alberga this week as he is on location somewhere on Lower Broadway, but I got my boys with me, Chris Meany, Pete Jensen. First of all, Pete, how are we doing today, buddy?
Doing great, and one step closer to the next round of the fantasy playoffs. We'll try to help get you there as best we can. Brought to you by Skip, of course, this episode. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door by Skip.
Meany, how we doing, buddy? How's fantasy playoffs? How are they going this part of the week for you?
Ryan Hartman, we talked about him on Monday. He had a great game on Wednesday and a great game on Monday. Yeah, I mean, he combined for 3 points, 2 power play points. He went over 20 faceoffs, 7 shots. So we got to love that. So as Pete said, we'll finish strong here. We'll take a look at some teams that have 3 games in the final 4 nights of the week and try to advance and get that fantasy hockey championship.
Not to pump your guys' tires too much, but a couple great calls from you boys on the Monday show. Ryan Hartman from you guys, a goal in each game so far this week, and Matthew Olivier from the Clouds. I think I maybe laughed Pete off the show when he mentioned Matthew Olivier, and he scores on Monday, Pete. So you guys are off to a hot start. If you were checking out the NHL.com fantasy waiver wire list on Monday, you're doing pretty good in your week so far.
Yes, and I'd like to also say that the St. Louis Blues are for real. There may not be a deeper fantasy team in terms of guys that are readily available than the St. Louis Blues. They have a mammoth game on Thursday at home against the Vancouver Canucks, who they're currently neck and neck with for the second wild card spot in the Western Conference. So I'm jacked up here means to start touting even more Blues than we talked about last episode.
Yeah, they've been unbelievable. I mean, since the Four Nations face-off, they're number 2 in points percentage, 769, 9-2-2. They have the easiest remaining schedule. We have the cheat sheet over at NHL.com/fantasy, taking a look at the easiest, the hardest, the back-to-backs, the most home games. Try to give you the edge against your opponent over the next couple of weeks. And Hofer's not going to get the start tonight. It's going to be Binnington, but they have a back-to-back over the weekend where they play Chicago and Nashville, and Hofer's 3-0-2 since the Four Nations break as well. So he's going to get another start for you. So he's somebody to keep an eye on. And all these Blues like Neighbors. Neighbors is scoring. Holloway's got 34 points in his last 35 games. Yeah, St. Louis is cooking at the moment.
So Neighbors has been somebody I've really wanted to see going since the start of the season, guys. When I looked at that Blues lineup at the start of the year, I thought, okay, where is the potential here? Neighbors was one of those guys. It's taken a while for us to get here, but now he's actually producing. It means you mentioned Holloway as well. I think he's a guy, at least from a betting angle, I'm very interested in right now, whether it's for a point, something with the shot prop as well. Pete, are you a believer in the Blues? I know that Western Conference playoff race is kind of messy right now, and it does feel like there's only one spot for all these teams. You got Utah in there, kind of. They fizzled out a little bit, but you've got Vancouver, Calgary. Are the Blues the team you're looking at right now that just feels like they're in the best form?
I was really high on Utah last week. We were talking about that young core, but some really suspect losses for them, right? The Oilers haven't been beating anybody really, and they just absolutely blew their doors off the other day. They also lost to Seattle last Friday, which was a concern to me as a non-contending team. So, yeah, I'm siding with the Blues right now. I like them better than Vancouver and Zach Bolduc. There's Philip Broberg. Justin Falk is hot. Like, the list goes on with this team, really.
Some major injury news coming down this week, guys. Miro Heiskanen with the knee injury and the update from the Dallas Stars. Very, very concerning. Looking at that Central Division, I know we've talked about futures a lot here lately, Meany, but does this affect your perception of Dallas at all? Like from a fantasy angle, Heiskanen was already done. I know we're obviously looking at Thomas Harley on that back end, and he does look really good for Dallas, but is he enough to get them through a possible first round series without Miro Heiskanen?
I don't know. Against the Avs, I didn't like to hear that news at all, Jake, about Miro Heiskanen. So you're going to be without a horse on the blue line who is a guy that's going to average over 24 minutes per game in a playoff series. And now, I love this team. We talked about Dallas and the Mikko Rantanen edition. They're extremely deep, but it's going to matter without Miro Heiskanen against the Colorado Avalanche should those two teams play each other in the first round. And something I noticed, Jake, you were at the Leafs game, I think, last night. And what I noticed was Bednar are throwing out a line in the start of the second period of Brock Nelson, Nathan McKinnon, and Valerie Nichushkin. And when those three were on the ice at 5-5, they played just over 10 minutes together at 5-5. Colorado generated 20 shot attempts. That is a trio that's going to put a lot of pucks towards the goal. They're going to live in the opposing end. So we'll see what happens with Miro Heiskanen. But if those two teams are going to play each other in the first round, there's no Miro, I'll probably lean to the Colorado Avalanche, Pete, with how good they've looked since all those moves at the deadline.
No, it's true. And I really trust both options in net for Colorado. I mean, they lost that game to Toronto on a fluky play there, but I think that really Wedgwood has been awesome. Blackwood's been even better. And when I look at Dallas, Jake, I don't trust Jake Ottinger. I know that he's among the wins leaders, but he has looked spotty in many different scenarios, regular season or postseason, for a couple of years now.
Like Meany said, I was at that game last night. I'm not going to surprise anybody with this take, but the Avs are ridiculously good. I know they lost. They ran into Joe Wall. Joe Wall was excellent in that game, but when the Avs roll that first line, or even the line that Meany just brought up with Nichushkin, Brock Nelson, and then they throw Makar and Taves on the back end, it is just survival mode for the other team. And I thought that's what the Leafs were into on Wednesday night. So keep an eye on that Avs team. And with the Dallas injuries, it does look like they could be in a tough spot in that first round, guys. I got a great listener question here brought to you by Skip. Should I drop Shea Theodore, or is he coming back too soon? Pete, I'll throw this one at you. Drop Shea Theodore, or wait, pray, and hope that he comes back here at some point in the next couple weeks?
I would hold on to him because we saw him on the ice for Golden Knights practice yesterday. They still didn't say a timetable means, but I mean, he's an important part to their power play, to their overall Stanley Cup futures outlook. And he is also a fantasy stud year after year when he is healthy, usually among the top 15 fantasy defensemen in categories like points per game and stuff like that, power play points. So he's a slam dunk when he's healthy. Hopefully he comes back in the next week or two.
Yeah, I think it depends. If you are playing in a playoff matchup this week, I mean, why are you holding on to him? If you are, you have a bye next week, I think you can afford to keep him. So it's all about context. And, there are a couple players that maybe you could pick up. Pete's talking about the Blues, Cam Fowler, he's got points in 3 straight, 4 points over that span. Brady Shea has got, points in 3 of his past 4. He's got a couple power play points. It doesn't look like Roman Yossi's going to come back. If you're the Nashville Predators, really, what's the point in bringing back Roman Josi? Considering where you're at in the standings, you're just looking at a top draft pick. So it really is about context, Jake. If you can afford to hang on to Shea Theodore, Pete's absolutely spot on. I mean, this is a defenseman as a top 5 upside at the position when he's in the lineup. So again, if you need starts right now, you can't afford it. And Jake, that's what you talked about on Monday. You can't really be married to your lineup. I mean, it's all about advancing at this point of the season. Sometimes you have to make those tough decisions.
Well, yeah, tough decisions is the name of the game at this point of the season, right? I think I posed you guys the question on Monday. Do I start Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen? Do I actually do it on a Monday? And credit to you guys. You were very confident, meaning you said, yeah, you start him. Boston doesn't score a whole heck of a lot. I did start him in a couple leagues. He looks great. But now he gets me the win on Monday. Now I'm at the point of the week, and Pete, this is kind of a strategy thing. I'm at the point of the week where I look at it and say, well, I got my win from UPL. I could maybe send him to the wire and drop him at this point and maybe pick up a forward that has 3 and 4 this weekend, because how much value is UPL going to give me down the stretch, right, Pete? That's the kind of strategy game we play in fantasy hockey. Sometimes you at this point of the season, it's never too late to cut bait with a guy.
True, yeah, you quit while you're ahead here with UPL. I don't love the matchup on the road on Thursday against Utah, and there are other options out there that you could pick up. Hofer that Meany was mentioning from the Blues. The Blues have a weekend back-to-back, whether it's against Chicago or against Nashville for the second time this week. I like rolling him out with this Blues schedule that we've been touting all week. And then, I just think that there are other guys out there that I would prefer down the stretch of the week in fantasy. Another fantasy question about those Blues. I already have Braden Shen and Buchnevich from the Blues. Would it be foolish to grab Bolduc? Playoffs start next week. I could possibly take second place if I win and current second loses. Then I would have a first round bye. I wouldn't go too heavy, guys, on one team in the fantasy playoffs. You agree? Means don't have 3, 4, 5 guys from one team.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, they are playing really good at the moment, but Bolduc's a guy who was pretty limited at 5-on-5 ice time in his previous game. I would load up on the top six. Like if you saw Jake Neighbors, I mean, Holloway is most likely owned in leagues. Braden Chen could potentially be available. If it is the top six, I mean, Neighbors is playing really good hockey at the moment with Thomas and Buchnevich, who the listener mentioned. But yeah, going all in is probably not ideal unless we're looking at, a top five offensive squad. Like maybe Brock Nelson was dropped to go back to Colorado. Like that, I wouldn't mind going all in on an offensive squad like the Avs, but yeah, I would probably stay clear for now. And you certainly, Jake, you want to plan ahead. I think that's, great as the listener checks in and, moving ahead, even if you're going to be on a bye, plan ahead, grab some of these players that you like over the next couple of weeks so your opponents don't get them.
Well, and I think there's a couple different ways to play it, right? If you're in an absolute dogfight over the weekend where you need every category, you need every point, then obviously you're maybe entertaining what I just said, dropping a Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen or making an extra spot on your roster. If you're up like 7-0, then exactly what you said means you could plan for the next week already and say, well, I got a couple pickups. I might as well already look at the schedule for next week and look at who's playing 4 games and maybe try to get ahead of the game a little bit. So depends on kind of where you're at in your week. Guys, Pete, I know some more injury news as well. Sean Monahan with that wrist injury, it feels like he's been out forever. He practiced with the full group on Wednesday for the first time since his injury in January. So I don't know. I have Monahan in a league. He's kind of been sitting there for a little while and no reason to drop him because I've got the IR spot. But do you think there's potential that he can come back and maybe give us a boost here in fantasy hockey?
I do, and the Blue Jackets need him. They have the 9th hardest schedule in the NHL the rest of the way. They've been snake-bitten lately with scoring 1 or fewer goals in 3 of their past 4 or something like that. Really had a high shot volume means the other day against the Devils, and somehow the Devils stole that. The Devils, on the flip side, are competing with them for playoff positioning, and the Devils have one of the 10 easiest schedules, which is something that's working in their favor. Terrible shot attempts percentage at 5-on-5 for New Jersey since Hughes and Hamilton went down, but this team's just finding ways to patch it together in their absence.
Yeah, we have that recent article over at NHL.com/fantasy edge stats galore when it comes to Jesper Bratt and Luke Hughes. Those two guys are carrying the Devils at the moment. Looks like they're going to go back to Markstrom, and then Jake Allen will get another start. So if you streamed Allen, maybe hang on to him. I kind of prefer him a little bit more than Jacob Markstrom, just where his game's at the moment. But yeah, you guys are right about the Blue Jackets. They've lost 4 straight, 6 of 7. They play the only game on Friday, which is beneficial. I don't think Monahan's going to suit up for that game, but, Marchenko's been quiet. Fantilli's been quiet. Maybe hang on to them for that matchup against Pittsburgh on Friday. And I think what you'll see, Jake, after this weekend, because they don't play again until Monday, is some of these players may be on the waiver wire. Like, you may be able to see on a Monday morning, all of a sudden Marchenko is on the waiver wire. Voronikov, Fantilli's been dropped. So I still believe that the Blue Jackets have something to offer offensively, but they are stale at the moment, and they can't keep the puck out of their net, but they are playing meaningful hockey, and that does matter at this time, Jake.
Well, yeah, when you pull up the logs for all these players, a lot of zeros right now. Even Zach Werenski, who's having like a Norris Trophy caliber season. I know he's neck and neck with Cale Makar. It still feels to be like Makar's probably going to win that, but Werenski is right there, and even he's kind of fizzled out. They got so goalied, guys, on Monday against Jake Allen. If you started Jake Allen on Monday, you were feeling fantastic. The only problem was your guy's call, Matthew Olivier, breaks that shutout in the 3rd period. So he was excellent, and I feel like Columbus is playing better than the results that they're getting right now. So at some point, maybe it's going to turn. Means, like you said, if some of those guys end up on your waiver wire, I think there's some value. Pete, we've got a great listener question here as well, a stardom sit-em question for Thursday night. As we know, Thursday's so busy, and you're going to have to sit some guys, and you're hoping not to sit that guy that has a goal and an assist or something that might end up killing your league. But start one tonight in a points league. We've got Matthew Nyes, Dylan Cousins, Brock Nelson, who are going head-to-head, Cousins and Nelson in the Ottawa-Colorado game, or Fantilli, who we just mentioned, Pete. So Nyes, Cousins, Nelson, Fantilli. Who we picking there?
Right, so I like that trend that Meany was saying about Brock Nelson playing with McKinnon and Nichushkin, but if you're going with safety and playing your best, which is something that I would always lean toward with these lineup decisions, don't put, because of some favorable matchup or the opposite, don't put like your best players, your hottest players over the past 2 months on the bench. So that would lean me towards Adam Fantilli for tonight with the Jackets having some bounce back appeal. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, it's a tough call. And then that's why this time of the season is so fun when you get into a slate where there's 14 games on a Thursday, double-digit games on a Saturday. This is what we were talking about. Cut some of these players that aren't going to get into your lineup so you can get those extra moves. I kind of lean Brock Nelson, but I like where your head's at, Pete, with Adam Fantilli. I don't think you can really go wrong with between Fantilli, Nelson, or maybe Cousins. I look at the slate, the 14-game slate. There's only a couple games of the 6.5 total. One of those games is in Ottawa tonight between the Avs and the Senators. And we know how much offense that Colorado can bring to the table. So I'll be really intrigued to see if that's a trio that Bednar is going to keep together, because if so, I'm looking at Brock Nelson. He's been dropped now over the past couple of days. His ownership is on the other side of 70%. So I would lean with him, but my goodness, those are some pretty good options, and I don't think you can go wrong with any of them, Jake.
Means are your Habs gonna pull this thing off? They look pretty good right now, but they have run hot and cold this year. We know that, and you probably know that watching all these games as well. They've gone on these hot stretches. They've also gone the other way as well. So are you starting to believe a little bit that this team can squeak into that last spot? I mean, it'd likely be a matchup against Washington, but I think at this point that would just be a great step for that Habs team trying to rebuild.
Yeah, a rematch of maybe 2010 when the Capitals were upset against the Habs in the first round. They scored over 100 more goals than the Canadians in the regular season, and were bounced in that first round. I am starting to believe in them. I mean, you have the record since the Four Nations face-off, 8-1-2. They're number one in the NHL in points percentage. They're fifth in goals, the sixth fewest over that span. Suzuki is tied for second in points, 18. Only Hintz has more than him. And Montembeault since the break as well. I mean, he didn't play. He got the boost like Jordan Binnington, but maybe just being around the guys gave him a little bit of a spark, because he's 7-0-1 with a .922 save percentage. And it's not just the recent run since Four Nations, Jake. You talked about hot and cold. If you go back and look since mid-December when they really started to go on a run, the only team with a better points percentage than them in the Eastern Conference, the Washington Capitals. So they're right there with the top dogs in the team, and that's a large sample size over 3 months. So I like where they're at. When you look at some of the teams they're battling with, they do have the easiest remaining schedule, apart from the Senators, who do look to be locked into that top wildcard spot. So I do like where they're at. They play with a lot of speed. I look at their edge stats, the third quickest team in terms of 20 and 22 mile per hour speed burst. So they're playing pretty good hockey at the moment, and I think they will squeak in.
Well, Pete, Phil Constantino isn't here to pump his Islanders tires, who like they're full Undertaker gif right now. Classic Islanders that they just find their way into the playoff race every year. No matter how bad they look at some point in the season, all of a sudden you pull up the standings, you're like, hey, the Islanders are 2 points out of a playoff spot right now. So that's just what we do every year. Pete, any feelings on that East race? To me, I think what the Rangers did on Monday night, Tuesday night, may have been one of the worst performances I think I've seen from a team all season long. I thought they should have been automatically eliminated for that performance. But do you have any feelings on the East wildcard race? I know Habs are kind of hot. Feels like the Sens have maybe put their stake in the ground a little bit right now as well.
I look at most disappointing teams in the NHL this season, probably Nashville, number one, because they're not even in the race. Number two is the New York Rangers. I had them going far in the playoffs in the preseason. I mean, that was an abomination the other night against Calgary, who was playing, on the second of a back-to-back. I mean, it just didn't make any sense. You hope, you think that these guys would want it. Maybe they're just not constructed in the fashion where they feel that the group gives them a chance. I know there was the front office stuff going on with Trouba and some of these other guys, Kakko, some disagreements across the board between everyone. But yeah, that was really bad. I lean with Columbus over them. I also lean with the Devils and the Habs. It's sad to say.
All right, guys, it's now time for On the Money, courtesy of Bet365. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 or older, Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you or someone you know has concerns about gambling, visit connexontario.ca. Means big Thursday night card. How do we navigate something like this? There's just so much to pick through. Anything that jumps out to you right away here on a very busy Thursday night in the NHL?
Yeah, you guys know I like my props. I mean, Carolina, they're massive favorites on the road against the San Jose Sharks, so we're not going to take that number of minus 340 on the money line. But Carolina, they've won 7 straight, right? Mikko Rantanen, see you later. Don't need you. They're outscoring their opponents 23-9 over that span. I look at a guy like Taylor Hall, right? Another sneaky addition at the deadline. He has goals in back-to-back games. He has 5 points over his past 5 games. He has 3+ shots in 3 straight and 5 of 7. Nobody gives it up more at 5 and 5 than the San Jose Sharks. So Bet365 Bet365 plus 128 for 3 shots for Taylor Hall, and he's minus 130 to pick up a point. So you look at some of these other guys like Aho and Jarvis, minus 310 for a point. Jarvis minus 230 for a point. He's getting really good value in a guy like Taylor Hall, who is also, by the way, on the first power play, Pete.
So Bet365 is offering this boosted 3-leg parlay: Ovechkin, McDavid, and Celebrini to score goals at plus 1,800. Ovi, love the matchup against the Flyers. McDavid, you could trust him on a night-to-night basis. Can Celebrini open it up against the Carolina Hurricanes? Why not? I think Carolina could win that game, 7-4 or something wacky like that, and I wouldn't be surprised if Celebrini got involved. So I appreciate them offering it because I think it gives people a chance to connect on 3 of the best players in the game.
I've been burned on the OV live anytime goal a couple times, guys. When the Caps get up in the third period, he's been getting a little pass happy. He set Protas up for that empty netter, a week or two ago, and then the other night doesn't even get to the empty net against Detroit. They score too many goals that he sets up McMichael for that last goal. So my strategy's not working. I did have a listener actually send me a nice OV last goal scorer ticket that they said that they bet because of what we've talked about on the show, Pete. So nice to see that. And still, I think a lot of angles to bet OV here. I'm going to continue to do it, even though I've been burned a couple times here.
Yeah, Pete, at a lot of angles, just to bet our guy Protas, right? When we put together the tweet yesterday as well, I mean, we were looking at some of the 5-5 numbers. This Capitals team is so amazing. We're just like, we look at the 5-5 numbers, the point leaders, and we see Draisaitl, Pastrnak, Crosby. Who's number 4? Protas. What? He's plus money for a point tonight, right? Against the Philadelphia Flyers, and he's got 11 points in his past 8 games. He's having an unbelievable season, 61 in 68 games, Pete. So, man, don't sleep on the Capitals. I know we all want Ovechkin, and we're all rooting for him, and he's shooting the puck like a madman, but some of these other Capitals have really good value in the betting market as well, Pete.
And Protas is still plus 320 for a goal tonight against the Flyers, who are a non-contender. So don't look away from that. That's a nice one. Ovechkin, 8 away from the record, plus 110 to record 3.5 or more shots on goal. That seems like a near lock, right? And if you want to say maybe he'll score a hattie against the Flyers, you want to get greedy, plus 2,500 for him to do it.
I like it.
Wow. I can't get tired of this Ovechkin stuff, Give me more Ovechkin conversation. Protas is an absolute beast, I'll say that. And if you want more Alex Ovechkin conversations behind the scenes, you go check out NHL Unscripted with my man Jason Demers and Adnan Verk. They had Dylan Strome on this week. Ooh. They got behind the scenes. Apparently, when Ovechkin scores a goal, he is going to the player who assisted on the goal and having him sign the jersey. Amazing. He's collecting all of this memorabilia. It's wild. So go listen to Dylan Strome. He was fantastic on all of the Ovechkin stuff. I still think this Caps team is a little fraudulent. I'm not so sure if I love them come playoff time. But hopefully Ovechkin can get there. I think it's going to be very, very tight, though, Jake. Very tight.
Bobby calling my 35-1 Caps ticket fraudulent right now. But I've seen some big numbers. If you jumped in, I was a little late to the party, honestly, guys. I still thought that they, like Bob said, maybe were a little fraudulent early in the season. But then I kind of became a bit of a believer. Means, what do you think about that side of the bracket while we're on it? Because obviously the Caps are going to be the favorite, and they've had this great regular season. But I think there's an opportunity for a Carolina or even maybe a New Jersey. I know it's tough without Jack Hughes and Dougie Hamilton there, but I think a little bit of a path for the Hurricanes possibly to go on a sneaky run here.
Yeah, I don't really believe in the Hurricanes and I don't believe in the Devils, but I do believe in the comment from Bob about how they could be fraudulent. That wouldn't shock me at all. I mean, you have the whole President's Trophy curse thing as well, but we've seen the Capitals fold in the playoffs before, but they do feel like they're built a little bit differently with some of the pickups that they have. They look like they're stable between the pipes. Logan Thompson, who's been there before, and I really like the Chychrun addition from them, right? It's kind of just lighten the load a little bit from Leo Carlson, Carlson. So, I think they have the best path. I'll say that because the Atlantic is really, really strong.
The guy who's climbing up the list, the coach's list, is Carberry for me because he's a good interview too. He'll talk it up, and he's doing a great job there. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. To me, if I had a big fat gun right to my head and it was Capitals or Hurricanes, I think I'm going Hurricanes.
Well, who should we be more worried about if it was like the 1 versus the wild card 2? Should we be more worried about the Winnipeg Jets facing a team like the St. Louis Blues, who they lost to in the playoffs a couple years ago? You got Binnington, do I look nervous? That type of stuff in your back of your mind? Or do you worry about the Capitals if they face off against, say, Montreal, and Montreal gets Demidov back potentially back in the States after he was drafted? That would be crazy. That would be a crazy wrinkle, Chris.
Yeah, well, the one thing about those matchups is, you have those two top teams that have been playing cruise control hockey for the last little bit, and maybe they, take the foot off the gas in the final couple weeks, where you have a team like the Blues or the Habs, whoever gets those final wildcard spots are red hot because they're going to have to be in order to get into the playoffs. So we'll keep an eye on that. I think those two teams are built pretty sound, but if you give me Binnington versus Hellebuck again, I may just have to lead Binnington, Jake.
Last thing on Ovechkin. I know Russian machine, don't break, but you know what I would like to see here? I really would. I know he's going for the goal record, but you know what? For the sake of the team, give the guy a little break here. Give him a break. Get him set up for the playoffs. Give him a breather, because what are you going to do? You're going to go all out wild to get this record here this season, and then you got Ovechkin, Russian machine, first round of the playoffs. Those like he looked last year. It potentially could happen. So just keep that in mind. I really would tip the cap to Carberry. I know he said he would never do it, gonna go for the record, but really, if we're talking about what's best for the team, you know what? I would give Carberry a nod if he said, you know what? Russian machine is taking a little break right now to get ready for the playoffs. Okay, that's all I have to say. I know it's never going to happen, but it would be the right thing to do as far as the team goes.
One more thing just to add to that, when you're talking about that, Bob, it reminds me of the Lightning. Remember when the Lightning were going for that all-time record and Vasilevsky was just playing nonstop? And I kept thinking to myself, why is Cooper playing Vasilevsky? For what? They want to get 66 wins? Who cares? What happened? They got bounced in the opening round against the Blue Jackets. Not only did they get bounced, I believe they got swept. So it is something to keep an eye on, down the stretch.
Well, yeah, that and I think perfect scenario for Washington is Ovi breaks the record with like 3 games to spare, and we get Bob Bender's scenario where you get him a little bit of rest, get him. He's an older gentleman here, I full credit to Ovi. He's gone through a broken leg this year. It's actually crazy what this guy is doing. Goal per game pace, the injury, everything like that. So get Ovi a little bit of rest down the stretch. But if that record is still in sights, guys, there's no way he's missing games, Bobby.
Now, he's going to go, and they're going to play him all the way to the end. But now, courtesy of Bet365, my man Drew Lyons actually sent me a note, and he wanted us to do this. So, all right, so NCAA tournament gets underway here on a Thursday, full slate of games. Listen, we'll go quick. We'll get, championship winners, whatever. But I'll tell you today, I'm not getting caught up in the high point hype. I'm taking Purdue, lay the points. I know Matt Painter's had some issues here early. I also like Kansas. I think Kansas and Bill Self, you got to remember, they were a preseason number 1 team here. I like them. And I like VCU to knock off to BYU, and I love BYU. I think BYU is a great, fantastic team. They could fill it up, but I think VCU and that coach, Ryan Odom, he's a hot coach.
Bobby's already taken shots at my high point pick. He did not enjoy my high point pick, so we'll go head to head on that one, Bobby. I think high point covers. They're gonna have to get the hot shooting game, so I'll go high point in that game. I kind of think the Mountain West might be bad. That's my one take. We saw San Diego State get absolutely obliterated by the Tar Heels in the play-in game. I've liked Colorado State this year, guys. They play Friday. I kind of think Memphis gets that one as a slight dog, very slight dog. I kind of like Memphis in that game, boys. That's where I'm going.
We're going head to head on that. And my national championship winner is Auburn. I hate to go chalk. They're plus 550 or so. I can't take Duke. I can't take Florida. The numbers are just too. They're just not there for me. I'm going to take Auburn. Okay, the number 1 overall seed at plus 550, and I'll skip over the whole Duke Florida stuff. This year is very, very, very strange, very top heavy, really hard to find some value. If you wanted to take a couple long shots, look at Maryland, look at Michigan State, look at Texas A&M as a huge long shot. Very unlikely they win, low probability of them winning, but maybe a little sprinkle meanie here and there.
Yeah, sure. Why not? I like Drake as the upset against Missouri. I think that's interesting. I'm a Kansas guy, so I've watched the Jayhawks play awful basketball for a majority of the year, but I like Self in this situation. I don't think they'll go on a run, but I do like them. I have chalk for I have Florida winning. I agree with Bob. The number's not great, but I think that they're all around sound. I think that there's a buying window on Auburn and how they played lately, but I certainly like Florida.
Pete's taking the Johnnies.
Petey's all over the Johnnies. That's it. Johnnies win today. Johnny's this. Johnny's that. He loves the Johnnies.
I like it.
He's got his head right up Rick Pitino's rear end. He loves the Johnnies, right? Petey, you love him.
Well, yeah, we're hoping for that Patino-Calipari matchup in round 2. I know you were saying the Johnnies might deserve a 1 seed. They didn't get it. I think they still are out for some respect. I would not be surprised at all to see them go to the Final Four. And then you mentioned Maryland. Maryland's got some size. Maryland might be the best team in the Big Ten. Nobody's talking about them. I like their ceiling in this tournament, maybe even to come out of that. If the Johnnies get upset, I like Maryland maybe to come out of that side of the bracket.
That guy Queen on Maryland is a good player. Very inconsistent team. They do have some pieces I like. If the number was not a part of it, I agree with Meany. I would take the Gators to win it, but I just can't. The number just doesn't make sense for me. All right, I think we've gone over our allotted time here with the hoops, but that was for Drew Lyons. That was from my man Drew Lyons over at Bet365. Okay, put a bow on it.
I'm hoping for a Gators Houston matchup at some point, just to see the breakneck pace the Gators want to play at, and then Houston try to bring them down. That's what I'm hoping for at some point. Any final words here, guys? We have some great matchups on Thursday. We didn't mention Edmonton versus Winnipeg. We know how great Winnipeg's been this year. Edmonton, I know, hasn't played all that well recently, but they looked like the Oilers the other night. I know it's only 1 game, but they absolutely blitzed the Utah Hockey Club. Still trying to figure out a name, Pete. So Edmonton, Winnipeg, any feeling there? I kind of feel like that might be a sign that the Oilers are starting to kick it into gear here.
Edmonton can fail to show up against some bad teams out there, but remember what they did against Dallas in Rantanen's first game. They beat them. They could beat anybody in the league any given night. So I kind of like Edmonton for them to elevate their game there. There's also Tampa Bay, Dallas, which should be an awesome matchup as well. That's 2 teams with a really high ceiling. Look at Granlund. Granlund's been super hot lately since the trade, and it was a little quiet at the beginning after the trade, but really, really good lately.
Yeah, I'll wrap up with a couple props. I mean, I talk about that Avs line. I mean, there's nobody hotter than Valeri Nichushkin. Since he's returned to the lineup 10 games, he's got 10 points. He's got 4+ shots in half of those games. And I talked about that top line last night with McKinnon. So I'd take a look at him for 3 shots. He's plus money, maybe for him to hit the score sheet as well. And I'd go to these Blues, right? I really like where they're at. I mean, Holloway's minus 125 for a point if you want to include Jordan Kyrou over at Bet365 plus 170. Take a look at Neighbors plus 115. Thomas and Buchnevich plus 155 for a point. Just where the Blues are at. Byfield and Fiala playing together against the Chicago Blackhawks plus 155 for a point. And then Suzuki and Caulfield. I mean, talked about nobody really hotter than Suzuki since the Four Nations break, plus 115 for a point for those teams, for those 2 guys as well. And then on the way out, I don't believe that Nashville should be 170 favorites at home against the Ducks. You want to look for an upset? Quack, 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 Mr. Ducksworth. How about Cutter Gauthier? I mentioned Leo Carlsson. He's actually on the Ducks, not the Capitals. That's John. But Cutter Gauthier is up with Leo Carlsson on that top line. He's been good lately as well. Nearly a point per game. Guy over his last 10. Played a career high 1836 in his last game. Take a look at him maybe as a sneaky little point parlay.
Some ridiculous lines on the Preds this year means. If you've just been fading the Preds all season, you've been right. Feeling very good. So I'm in on that one. Elite Sports Night on Thursday. I know we talked about March Madness a little bit. Big hockey night Saturday, as we always have as well. If Nick Alberga survives Nashville, he will be back on Monday for this show. So we wish Nick all the best in his adventures on Lower Broadway. This episode was brought to you by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip.